Hi, my name is Edgar Soler and welcome to Classic Industries Tech Center. Today we're going to be covering front-end vehicle lighting. I'm going to go over a few options you have for your front-end lights and explain a couple differences about them. Aside from your standard replacement halogen bulbs, we do have quite a few options. We have the original T3 style headlights. Now these T3 style headlights are available in 5 different configurations with all the correct markings. We have both sizes, the 7-inch and the 5 3/4 inch. And if you have any busted trim rings, we also have those in both sizes as well, along with the necessary hardware to install them. Now the next thing I want to show you is what you have as far as like an upgraded Euro type of a headlamp. This is kind of like for your custom resto mod. It's got a little bit different appearance here, as you can see. And I have 2 here just to give you an example of what they look like. It's a diamond cut plastic back housing. It looks a little different from your typical standard replacement bulb. Now I have here a 4x6 and a 7x6 style. This style right here is used like on trucks. We also have a 7-inch round headlight available in this style as well. And our last option here are the Delta Tech headlights. The Delta Tech headlights come in either a 7-inch or a 5 3/4 configuration. We have a couple of different variations available. We have this convex lens, which is kind of round, and then the flat lens. They pretty much look like your stock replacement headlight, but the trick thing about them is that they come with an H4 bulb. And you see that here we have a slightly larger end to them with 3 prongs. Usually on some high beam applications, you may only have a 2-prong plug, and that's why we also carry these replacement harnesses. So when you're doing your conversions, because of the shape of the 2-prong plug, it does not fit over this. So that's a thing to consider when considering to convert over to this type of a lighting system on a 4 headlamp vehicle application. We also offer different options as far as the bulbs. You can get the bulbs for these in either a halogen or a xenon type bulb, and the wattages are 55 or 100 watt. Due to the extra electrical load, it's recommended that you upgrade the wiring harness as well. And here we have a painless wiring harness that we're going to be using on our featured install today of these Delta Tech headlights. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we have the vehicle we're going to be working with today, the 1981 Camaro Z28. Here we have the 7-inch headlights, which we're going to be converting over to the Delta Tech style headlight, along with a painless wiring harness because of the high wattage bulbs. Let's go ahead and take a look at the tools we need to get started. Okay, so we're gonna need a heat gun for the heat shrink. We've got some zip ties to fasten the cable and tuck it away under the front header panel or radiator support. We've got 8mm ratchet to loosen the battery terminals. And depending on whether your car has the original Torx head screws, you're gonna need a screwdriver with a T15 Torx bit or a flat screwdriver bit or a Phillips screwdriver bit. A center punch to drill the retaining screws for your relays, a drill with either a nut driver or a socket. We're also going to need a wire crimper and a wire stripper, and a pair of gloves if you're handling the bulbs. So the first thing you want to do is remove the negative battery cable. It's a good idea to do this anytime you're working with any automotive electronics. Taking your T15 Torx bit, go ahead and start removing the 4 screws we have here retaining the bezel to the header panel. Once all your mounting hardware has been removed, you can safely remove the headlight bezel. Okay, so next step after you remove the headlight bezel is to remove the headlight retaining ring. These are generally fastened by 3 screws, one at 4 o'clock, 11, and 8. Okay, now you can carefully remove your headlight retaining ring and slightly pull the bulb forward and remove your 3-prong connector. Okay, so now that we've got the headlights removed, we're ready to go ahead and bring in our painless harness. Basically, this harness pretty much acts like a switch. The relays take the signal from the headlights as soon as you pull the on knob, and then directs the power feed directly from the battery, supplying the 2 high-powered headlights. This is why it's required when using the 100-watt bulb. Once you find your location, depending on the design of your car, you want to go ahead and fasten it somewhere where it's not really in the way of things and it may not be rubbing up against moving parts. Just make sure you have a clear location and go ahead and mount it in place. Also, make sure your battery lead is close enough to the battery. So now that we found a good location, you just take your center punch and then take your self-tapping screw and go ahead and start to mount your relays. So now that we've mounted our fuses and our relays, we have to start routing the wires. Basically, we've got our ground and power wires right here, which we'll do last. So here we have our 3 remaining connectors. This would be the female connector, which would receive the signal from your existing wiring harness. So you'd want to remove your bulb and plug your old connection right into here. So now when you turn on your lights, it'll go directly through here and it'll go straight to your new bulbs through this harness. So now we take our female connector and run it through behind your radiator support. You can see here that we're going to take the old connector and plug it directly into this one. Once you snap the 2 together, you want to pull it back through and route this particular wire out of the way. This is where your zip ties could come in handy. So the 2 remaining connections are a left and a right. And the shorter lead is the side you would use closest to the battery. So you want to pass it back to the back portion of the radiator support and through the headlight opening. Once you've passed the cable through, we can go ahead and get the headlight and the retaining ring and start to reassemble this side. These Delta Tech headlights come with the 55-watt bulbs. Before we install our bulbs onto the vehicle, we want to change the bulbs on the assemblies themselves first. So you start that by removing the protective boot, and there's a little clip here that you remove that retains the bulb in place. Notice I'm wearing surgical gloves when handling these bulbs. Any little grease or contaminants will cause these bulbs to burn out prematurely. So here we have our 100-watt bulbs. So you just drop it in place and snap the retainer back to its original location. Once you've installed the bulb, go ahead and put the rubber dust seal back in place. So we're going to check the fit on these because the originals are just round, as to where these have the protective rubber boot that protrudes out from the back of the bulb. It's not uncommon to have to modify the opening on your headlight mounting bucket when installing these. So now that we're ready to install our headlight, snap the back of the connection in. So you just want to hold on to the retaining ring. Go ahead and reinstall the 3 screws. So now that we've fastened the trim ring in place, we can go ahead and reinstall the headlight bezel. You can start by lining all the holes up and just start the threads of each screw in each position, and then go back around and retighten the whole thing. Now that we've got our 4 screws in position, we can go ahead and use our Torx bit to retighten them. So now we have the last wire remaining here. So what you want to do is route this wire to the other side, probably across the top of the radiator core support, making sure that it doesn't get pinched or damaged in any way. So choose your routing selection carefully and go ahead and reinstall the other side of the headlamp. So now the last thing to do is to connect the red wire to the positive side of the battery and ground the black wire, either to the battery or to your grounding spot, or ground the battery to the body. So we're going to cut our wire and we're going to strip a small amount there. All right, so now we'll take our wire crimpers and make our connection. Then we'll pull the heat shrink over. Okay, so now we've got our heat shrink in place. We'll go ahead and grab our heat gun. So now we've completed our ground terminal. We can fasten this to the grounding screw on the body. We'll also go ahead and do a similar procedure on this one, just cutting just the right amount of wire needed to the battery terminal. So we're gonna reattach our ground for our headlight harness, and we're gonna take an 8mm wrench and loosen positive battery terminal. I'm gonna connect power lead. Okay, so we're done. Let's go ahead and see what the finished product looks like. And that's how it's done. A fairly simple headlight upgrade that anybody can do. Thank you for joining us at the Classic Industries Tech Center, and check back with us online for future installs.